Over 330 pounds, yet one of the most agile interior defensive linemen that I've watched so far for this year's draft. Tyleik Williams is who we're going to be discussing today, the defensive tackle from Ohio State. So let's get right into it. So yes, we're back with another breakdown of video. Yesterday, we had Jacob Parrish and a Kobe Bryant video in one. I felt okay about that one, but there was a lot in a little amount of time, and I know that I left some notes out there, maybe some key notes that I wish I would have thrown into that video. And today we're going to get back to a singular player. We'll see how this goes, but this was a guy that I've had notes on for a while, but I just haven't done a video on yet. And I think he's going to be a very interesting conversation when the draft comes along, because depending on who you're talking to, I think there could be some variety in terms of where teams grade this player because of what they're looking for. I mean, everybody has certain fits that fit them best. Some players can kind of get beyond that. But in terms of just his skill set, where he aligns, I mean, at over 330 pounds, you'd assume I'm talking about a guy that was consistently your nose tackle, right? Maybe he's in a 0 or a 1 technique or a 2-eye all the time. And that wasn't the case. He constantly lined up outside of the offensive guard. He constantly lined in the B gap this past season. It didn't mean he didn't have snaps in the A gap, but he only had 157 of those compared to over 400 in the B gap. That's where he's lived over the past few seasons since he's become a full-time starter for Ohio State. And his skill set, as much as it flashed at Ohio State, specifically as a run defender, the shed ability, his production isn't fantastic. 6.6% pass rush win rate, 7.8% run stop rate is pretty darn good, and there's a lot of factors for that being the case. Okay length to his game, over a little over 32 inches, and at 6'3", 334 pounds, his athleticism pops to me. It's not just in terms of like the explosiveness, where I see some of that, and we'll talk about it, but it's really the agility. It's the body control. Those things fall into place, and it's overly impressive for a guy at his size to move as well as he does. I mean, coming out of high school, reportedly weighed like 360 pounds before he got himself kind of back right in shape, and now we're seeing a guy that athletically is incredibly impressive for his build. So with that being said, let's dive right into this. So first off, let's start with Tyleik Williams' first step explosion, and this is an area that I went slightly above average to a good grade. I think he's kind of in that area. There's a weird thing here with Tyleik Williams is trying to figure out what's his position. Is he a nose tackle? Should he be looked at as a 3-tech? Should he be looked at as more of a defensive tackle that can play on the outside? Look, the flexibility matters. In today's NFL, a lot of teams are going to interchange those guys anyway, so if you can play inside of a guard and then outside of a guard, that flexibility is very helpful. I wish his length was even better, but for the most part, that's fine for an interior defensive lineman. Where he lines up more often than not, I do think has some importance to it. For me, overall, I think that this is a player that probably should line outside of a guard more often than not because of what he brings as a run defender in that spot. I think you're going to get more consistency there. I think it's going to bring a higher floor as a run defender, and he can make immediate contributions if he's lined up outside of the guard consistently. However, that's where some of the pass rush doesn't maybe shine as much. You don't feel as much of that first step explosion. You don't feel some of that first step get off as an interior rusher unless he's lined up over a center or an outside shade of a center, and that's where you talk about sub package. If he's out there on sub packages, that's a spot that he could kick into. However, can he give you that on base downs lined up more consistently outside of a guard? And he's brought that in flashes, just not consistently. And I think that's where the first step explosion kind of comes into play as well. He's light on his toes. You'll see this. He plays on his toes all the time. He's got active feet. He's got running feet as a pass rusher. He's light on his toes off the ball. He has that ability to kind of go some twitch really when getting upfield, and it flashes a lot more when he's working over the center. I think his reactive timing is just average, but there's a little bit of a burst. There's a twitchiness to it where he can really get off the ball. The problem is he can pop up a little bit. You'll see this laterally down the line of scrimmage if he's working a wider zone scheme and it just gets too wide. It just gets too upright. Or you'll even see it sometimes in just his upfield get off, especially the wider that he is, where it feels like he's just standing straight up before he even gets upfield. To me, it also minimizes some of the depth that he actually creates when he's working upfield as well, so it doesn't pop as often. Then you get to the little elements like the football intelligence to his game, which I think is great. I think he's a very smart interior defensive lineman. The way that he positions himself early, the early angles that he takes as a run defender, the way that he fits gaps, you'll see examples where it's a quarterback sneak. You know, there was no running back in the backfield. He steps inside, takes that away, jumps on the quarterback because he anticipates that just based on how the offense is aligned. He shows that, and he showcases really good vision through single blocks that's consistent. Really good feel for run schemes offensively. It allows him to set himself early, and then when he does work and scrape over plays, typically he ends up in the right spot. Williams is pretty accurate when he's working the run scheme. You could see the consistency there. Then he's working out in space. You see some of the pursuit speed. You see the body control to change directions as a pass rusher, but also just tracking down the quarterback. It works on stunts as well. His ability to kind of continue to work upfield as a pass rusher or find work on the inside, just kind of continue to scrape his way to like, hey, let me work over the quarterback. Let me get in his vision. separation. Let me make an impact on a pass lane here. Athleticism to instantly get up in the air, instantly affect passes. But overall, to me, I think it's just kind of slightly above average to good right now. I think it looks better the closer it is to the ball that you get him. But to me, this was an area that I felt like he was incredibly explosive on entry. He felt a little bit more quick to me, a little bit more lighter on his toes to me than anything. And I didn't feel like he covered great depth. When you would put him over like in a nose tackle role, then when you would have to work laterally, I thought it showed to be a little more concerning because the play speed would get cranked up. Things are happening even faster. And sometimes he still kind of fall behind just on how he'd early position himself. So there was like little subtle knocks that I have here. I think this can be improved upon, but for consistency's sake, putting him outside of guard against the run for me is the best spot. And that's probably where he'll live a lot in the NFL. But if you make him a nose tackle, if you can clean up some of the concerns, you're probably going to get more pass rush upside, specifically on early downs if he's not a sub-package rusher, which is very possible because right now he's not like an elite pass rusher, so teams may not view him like that anyway. If you were able to kind of dial him into a nose tackle role and keep his pads consistently down, you may feel more of that explosiveness, which moves these on to the play strength, which is where I have one of the highest grades for this player, specifically in terms of a critical factor. I think he's good to very good in terms of his play strength. A couple little things hurt him here, specifically coming back to the pad level, but for the most part, there's a lot that I struggle a little bit to kind of create a corkscrew. You'll see his knee kind of tap the ground. It taps earth a little bit too often. He doesn't have maybe some of that natural bend to really sink and hold his ground, recover off of that, but he also shows that athleticism where he's on the ground. He flies up, gets himself back to his feet. It's incredible athleticism, that body control that he does showcase. And to me, some of the bend that may be lacking there, what he does well is he takes on blocks really well. He unlocks his hips pretty well as well. Okay, I'd say that's adequate, but he does it really early. He wins to his spot early. This comes back to the first step. He's quick into positioning, quick into entry. He wins early. It shows up in his shed ability, which is so consistent as well. He gets his hips into it. Also showcases a lot of that core strength as well to really work and kind of throw off blocks and handle blocks point of attack. He has kind of that forward momentum that he can create into contact where he plays with a very consistently wide base, good base width on single blocks at the point of attack, but even then on some double teams that are just straight downhill, the way that it'll really spread out his base, and then you'll see some of the ankle bend and the ankle strength to kind of maintain ground when he gets him those spots as well. He doesn't always settle himself down. You'll see this on zone schemes on the front side or the play side where he can't really settle himself down. He plays a single block, then he gets himself flipped. He's not always staying square to the line of scrimmage consistently outside of him just kind of scraping down the line. Now, if you get him in a wide zone, he's outside of a guard, he can scrape down the line and stay square with that. And that points back to his agility specifically, which is very impressive. And that allows him to continue to work upfield through it. The problem is, though, if he's on the play side and it's an outside zone and they're trying to kind of knock him out of the play, that's where you'll see him kind of get flipped around, get turned. But he creates that jolt through his hips. I think that he has good to very good play strength, right? Sometimes he doesn't always unlock because of his positioning, but for the most part, I think he's a pretty strong player. And then in terms of pass rush, this is where I gave him slightly above average. I wish it was higher here. And at one point, I think it would have been higher for me here, but I think alignment matters. You put him over the center more often, I think the more often this is going to shine. Put him outside of guard, just a little bit hit and miss for me. The things I like, things that I don't like. There's that smooth redirectability. The agility for me is great. I think it could even be a higher grade than that. I mean, you could tap into that category if you wanted to for a guy at his size, what expectation is in terms of agility. That ability to kind of sift his way through gaps, that ability to create some slither, the short area movement skills, which allows him to play in really tight, close-quartered situations. It's that impressive movement, kind of laterally over blocks. Some of my issues, though, as a pass rusher specifically are, control will kind of be a little bit inconsistent. As much as I like the body control, I think it's great. Control can be a little bit of a problem trying to work upfield, losing some balance. His feet continue to drive. He's got hot feet. They continue to work. He's very active with his footwork, adequate speed that shows up more closer to the ball. He feels like he's playing a little bit faster the closer to the ball you get him when he knows it's a pass and he can just race himself upfield. Chip blocks tend to kind of stall out his reps. You don't get that as much, but the wider you put him, they would kind of just stall things out, and it really wasn't a reset. I didn't think you could do this in terms of play strength either, is continue to create consistent resets. Oh, let's create speed to power now. Let's drop down. Let's create some walk back. Like there was a great ability to create that speed to power, and even if he was working off a pretty nice get off, I thought that ability to kind of stick and then just drive into blocks wasn't fantastic either. I thought that he'd be a little bit linear in some of his walk back attempts. They felt really condensed as a rusher. He's not overly long either, so things felt a little bit tight. Where he was at his best is getting half man, getting off the ball well, setting himself up with half man opportunities, and then having those active feet run through contact. Add that he had the swivel footwork to be slippery. He'd win with really early entry by the way that he could position himself. Suddenness that would really flash occasionally. We saw this against Texas a few times where you could flash some suddenness. Now I had a problem with, I didn't think he always set himself up as a pass rusher. I didn't think he always opened up opportunities. He would kind of just have a path that he was planning to go to, and that was the path that he was going to follow, allow offensive guards to settle into it. But using that first step, he did show some suddenness because he could quickly change directions and get into contact. And that kind of jolt could create, it just didn't always finish throughout the rep. Plan could be a little bit misplaced as well, which again, outside of a guard, I think you saw that a little bit more often. If he continued to work upfield, he has that vision to kind of work himself into the play. You work him on stunts. He's got late effort wins as well. He just didn't feel overly powerful. Overall, I think it's slightly above average, and I think if you put him over the center more often, you get more effectiveness here, and teams could bet on that in the NFL, saying, hey, let's make him a nose tackle, because the upside that he could have as a pass rusher would be higher, and that's what we're looking for. That's his big value on early downs, is that he can add that on top of the fact that he can stop the run. The problem is just, can we get to that same consistency level that we see outside of a guard against the run that we would get if we put him as our consistent nose tackle? Because then for me, you get to that sheddability, and this is where he thrives. He's very good in terms of ability to shed. He's got really a quick, contact and then release, which just drop guys on the ground immediately. You saw that against Texas over and over. I mean, he's just dropping guys left and right in that game. You saw it against Iowa. He has some ability to create gap and a half wins. And to me, it comes back to the entry. It's the hips. He gets himself square to block so quickly. He gets on blocks before they get to him, so they're not square. He is square. He's balanced. He's got a base width to him, and he's really tough to deal with. It makes it really difficult for guys to get inside his chest, find a consistent latch. They're typically having to work from the outside, or they don't have a consistent latch, and he kind of controls the rep from then on. Wins early like that. He has the hips again to create some slither. He can shoot up. He can shoot gaps, specifically that very fast entry that to me has been a problem for him as a run defender for offensive linemen. Wish he had a little more length here, because I don't think he always created like consistent lockouts, even when he won early, like settling himself down, creating a lockout, really diving into a gap and a half where I can walk him back and settle my base down. He felt a little bit smaller as a run defender. He didn't feel like he was making himself an umbrella or playing super wide. Things felt a little bit tighter as a run defender. Like I could fit my gap here, or I could get over top. I can scrape on top, or I can work over top, but he wasn't going to take up a ton of airspace. It didn't feel like he played a little bit smaller. Again, he could drift a little bit upright, which would get him into some problems. It could really limit his ability to actually reset blocks, but I think needs to be more consistent. We'll get to that with hands as well. But he's got active feet at the point of attack. It allowed him to stay alive. He had some energy, had some jolt to his game. Destroy blocks that kind of would overset, or they'd play over their toes and their weight would shift forward. And that's because he was so controlled within his entry. So to me, I think he's very good there. And then his hand usage to me was also good. I mean, some little knocks that I had here, like again, resetting hands low, didn't feel that consistently. If he came in high, two-handed swipe, that would be a little inconsistent. I like how he connected his pass rush with his timing pretty well. You see a nice little inside club move that he could get through. There's a little bit of a two-handed swipe. Didn't feel like a ton of variety outside of that. And then the swim move, which was also as a run defender where you go up and over. Outside of that, didn't feel a ton of variety, but I felt like those things were very polished in terms of timing. It just wasn't always that accurate as a pass rusher. It felt much more accurate as a run defender where everything was kind of happening fast. As a pass rusher, it didn't feel as well paced. Didn't feel like it would set up that well. However, it would time well within his footwork. So that two-handed swipe would be a little bit inaccurate. He could actually come in a little bit wide, which would throw off his anchor as well, specifically early on plays. That could give him a problem, just coming in wide, getting in on the shoulders. There's a lot of things I did like with his hands. He was pretty firm at the point of attack. He played with big hands on entry when he got in your chest, and he could really just control the block from there on once he won early. I didn't feel like he was overly violent with his hand usage. Win move showed a lot of consistency, specifically as a run defender. To keep his hands ready, he played with ready hands and active hands. Ready as a pass rusher, working through stunts, one block to the next. Let me get back inside. He played with very ready hands and also active hands that would just keep working as the play went on. He was very accurate to deal with down blocks, the early positioning there as well, the FBI in terms of recognizing run scheme, which would set him up early. His hands would also work really well in the pass lanes. He had the athleticism to get up into the air and affect those spots, to find some break points more as a run defender. So to me, it's an interesting case. I think that he has the build of more of a nose tackle, but he has the athleticism of a guy that can work outside of a guard. In today's NFL, that flexibility is pretty necessary. I think if you put him as a nose tackle, you could see more upside and what he could be as a pass rusher, which you can also already do as a run defender, as long as we can find that consistency. When the play speed cranks up a little bit more, right? When things are happening a little bit faster, can he keep his pads down? He's going to constantly have four hands on him if he's working nose tackle. So if that's the case, can we just have him not get bullied basically as a run defender? Can he maintain what he's so capable of as a run defender as working outside the guard, which right now is his big selling point, because then you put him there and as a pass rusher, it's serviceable. He's with a very good motor as well. He's a smart player. He has the ability to track. He can tackle and finish. He can close in space. You're going to get enough there, right? That's worth drafting, but I don't know that he's going to become a special pass rusher consistently having to work outside the guard. I don't know that you tap into his explosiveness much as you could the closer to the ball that you get him. So weird spot, which could have teams a little bit I don't know exactly, what we're going to fall in love with here or what we love for him position wise, but a team that wants flexibility, this is a guy for you. If you want flexibility in the interior, Tyleik Williams makes sense. And as a run defender, if you put him in a spot that he was at Ohio State, he's going to defend the run well, and he has some upside with ways that he can defend the run. It's just inconsistency on combo blocks is a problem. And as a pass rusher, how much can you improve that? Because I think it can be quickly kind of improved just by improving the setup of all of it. That way it's just not like he's just throwing things. If you can improve like the attention to detail when he's going to certain moves, I think his pass rush could improve from where it is right now, just alone. But I don't know how high that ceiling is the wider he has to play from the ball. So overall, for me, I ended up with Tyleik Williams at a 6.32 grade, which drops him below Jahad Campbell, but right above Jalen Royals for this year's draft. That to me feels like a day 2 pick for sure, but it's going to be very interesting because I think he could have some movement. I wouldn't be shocked if he fell in the draft because people are kind of weird like on how he plays. He's not an elite pass rusher. His explosive doesn't pop as much to me on film, but at the same time, he may not be that far off from making an immediate contribution. And if you can dial him into the right spot and you have a scheme that feels comfortable for him, that he could get to a much higher ceiling. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.